recently what we are observing is that even the EU started shifting its foreign policy making towards Central Asian countries. So before used to be as a normative power, mostly norm power, but nowadays what we are seeing is that the shift is happening more to the flexible, more to the pragmatic side. So the both side, whether it's EU side or whether it's Central Asian side, so they are switching towards to more pragmatic, flexible foreign policy making. And in that sense, what we are seeing is that the strategic agreements are being made, and also the frameworks like Central Asia +1, Central Asia and the EU countries engaging in different kind of issue areas, including climate change, including the connectivity, digital connectivity, and the energy, the issues. We also see particular platforms like business forums that has been happening since 2019, and we see 15 of these business forums. And in this all, what we see is that all Central Asian countries robustly engaging in economic and also some other security-related initiatives with the EU countries. So in that sense, especially since the war, what we see is that the EU and Central Asian multilateral negotiations and cooperation are enhancing. So, well, the EU's normative power and as far as its influence are concerned, what we see is that mixed result. So, regarding to the independent sovereignty norms, especially after the war in Ukraine, what we see the robust impact, the strengthening and the more focusing on these sovereignty norms. So we see the correlation and collocating this the EU's normative approach in the sovereignty side, as well as Central Asia's interest in these sovereignty strengthening approaches. But as far as human rights and the rule of law norms are concerned, what we see is that the Central Asian leaders, they are being more reluctant in pursuing and localizing these norms in Central Asia. Mostly they are pursuing it as the politically pressuring point. Especially when the investment, the packages or aids, they are tied to these human rights or rule of law norms, the leaders leaders mostly might think that is the interference to the internal affairs of these countries. So again, what we see is that the normative power of the EU is having the partially impact to the Central Asia. EU is very much well positioned in supporting the resilient conditions of Central Asian countries nowadays. So it's very much important to see that some traditional powers, they are weakening their power conditions in Central Asian countries. And the Central Asia also try to brought their own local agency, and also not only to be the norm taker, but also to be able to engage in doing or making the agendas. In that particular part, Central Asian countries, they would like to diversify their relations with external powers, so not necessarily rely on Russia or China, but as well as to be open to other powers, including EU and the USA. So in this particular sense, what we see is that the EU initiatives, including Global Gate initiative, right, and some norm-related aspects are having the particular prior the aspects which match with Central Asia's core interests, including connectivity, mostly this Trans-Caspian international transport corridor, which is middle corridor, as well as some initiatives regarding to the raw materials, and also some agreements with the digitalization or digital economy and the green economy. So in all this sense, these agreements are happening, already started, Kazakhstan being active in all these terms. And I think that among all these enabling Central Asian countries to be able to connect it to the world, so not necessarily depending on the Northern Corridor, right, on Russia, but also being able to diversify their other corridors, especially through the middle corridor, and to be able to reach to the EU within 15 days, which enables, right, the connectivity of Central Asian countries, as well as the digital connectivity. For example, this is also the initiatives which are enabling Central Asian countries to be able to have good internet access, like secure in terms of cybersecurity, and also enable the banking and the energy sectors in Central Asian countries. So in all this sense, the EU actually is helping to become a strong, more autonomous region. And also help for the intra-regional cooperation in Central Asia. So among 5 Central Asian countries, so they are connecting and cooperating more thanks to the initiatives of the EU. In that sense, yes, the EU is actually helping or supporting the resilient and also made Central Asian region. So not necessarily depending on the external powers, but self-guided, self-made Central Asia. So in that sense, yes, I see the support of European institutions on Central Asia. What we are expecting, and also what our book says, figures out, are that since the war, what we have is that the power or traditional power in terms of security and also economic power of the Russia is actually weakening. And there are also the implications of that. Other thing is that because of the war, also the indirect sanctions and the implications of the sanctions on Central Asia. So for many businesses, the process become not easy. So they need to pass particular procedures, which take times, efforts, and also some other the issues. Another aspect is that what we are also observing is that the shift towards the China side, so inclination towards the China side. So the investment projects. So if you observe the investment project in Central Asia, especially to the Tajikistan or to the Kyrgyzstan, this connectivity or digital technology governance are mostly funded by the China side. So the Belt and the Road Initiative and the current cooperation between Central Asian countries and China, they are emerging. And what we see is that the share of the Chinese involvement is actually taking the place or taking Russia's share in Central Asia. What we also observe is that since the war in Ukraine, the intra-regional cooperation strengthened. We expected actually to have more kind of the speedy pass, but although there is the changes towards more comprehensive cooperation, intra-regional cooperation in Central Asia, but the process is actually happening slow. So it's happening, but happening very much slow. So again, the Central Asian countries also had a sense that the 5 Central Asian countries, they actually can gather together and bring their own agency and also follow build their own approaches. So in that sense, what we see is that the perspectives for the interregional cooperation in Central Asia. The book also finds or acknowledges that although there is the shift, right? There is the shift for the less dependence on Russia, but at the same time, if you look at the trade, so again, pre-war time, the trade of Central Asian countries through the Northern Current corridor was around 86%. When the war started, and because also the investments coming to the middle corridor, the share through the Northern corridor dropped by 56%, but still 56%, it's high. The share is very much high. So still in terms of the Northern corridor, the Central Asian countries are still being significantly dependent on Northern corridor, as well as if you look at, for example, electricity grids. So many of them, they are very much tight bound to the Russian territories. So in the sense, we Central Asian countries still dependent on the Russian side. But at the same time, since the war, the society becoming more active, so decolonial narratives, decolonial discourses become openly discoursed in Central Asian society. Also, what we see is that in terms of the language, countries like Kyrgyzstan, for example, started bringing particular reforms to the Kyrgyz language to qualify or enhance the importance of the Kyrgyz local languages. So in the sense, what we see is that the colonial approach among the society members increased, but still we are dependent economically and also in energy terms from the Russia. And perhaps in the future, this might bring particular conflicts or misunderstandings. In that particular sense, perhaps the EU's approach and the support and also initiatives supporting or co-creating particular programs together and also enabling Central Asian countries to be able to be part of the agenda and also increase their interconnectedness between and among the other actors in the international arena, perhaps would facilitate the agency and the independence and also being able and also the foreign policy making of Central Asian countries, which intend to balance the power among the great powers. I'd like to suggest for the EU policymakers and analysts perhaps to see Central Asian countries not as passive bystanders, but to see as active actors in international arena. And as well as co-create the programs, agendas, and let Central Asian policymakers to be able to build the agendas as far as any issues are concerned in international relations. So again, I think this process started. So, for example, Kazakhstan started calling itself as a middle power, and in many occasions, Kazakhstan is also declaring and saying that Central Asian countries would not take any side or alliances. Instead, the work and be active as a middle power who respects the international order, multilateralism, and respect the sovereignty norms in international arena. So in that sense, supporting this Central Asia's perspectives perhaps would enhance and help for the cooperation between and among the states. Another aspect to talk about is that not pushing so-called Cold War kind of phenomena when the states force the other states to take the side. So we have noticed in our book, so still Central Asian countries, they cannot just get away from the influence of the Russia. Russia would stay there forever, right? And we also see that we are still dependent economically and in terms of security on Russia. So here, especially Central Asian countries, trying to to diversify their relationship and not necessarily to take particular side or alignment or alliances. So I think this is also would be kind of good approach for the EU politicians or analytic groups to consider that part, not necessarily pushing them to take the side. And the third aspect that I would also want to mention is that like looking from the lens of global IR perspective, perhaps not necessarily considering from the one side, but instead to be able to understand the society from looking at their local narratives, local aspects, the process happening in Central Asia. So in that sense, I think this would facilitate and enhance the cooperation between EU and the Central Asian countries.